to the entertaining Talkin' Sports.
What is going on, football fans? Back at it with another New York Giants video. Going to dive into a couple topics today. Going to try to do more videos like this where I combine a couple topics for you guys when it's appropriate. I'll probably go live tomorrow to talk about the New York Giants. Try to do one of those a week. But in this video, we're going to dive into Evan Engram. Going to give my opinion on him this offseason and what the New York Giants should do at the tight end spot. I'm also going to dive into the performance last night by Devonte Smith, as all New York Giants fans' eyes and football fans in general's eyes were glued to Devonte Smith yesterday to see what he would do in the national championship game and give my thoughts there. Also pull up some quotes of what some former and current New York Giants had to say about the prospect. In addition to that, I also wanted to touch on Allen Robinson and some of the news that came out yesterday with him regarding, whether or not he's going to stay with the Chicago Bears, being that he is a top target for a lot of New York Giants fans at the wide receiver position. We all know that he's probably the biggest name at that spot in free agency this year, and it is a huge need for the New York Giants. So I'll touch on that and whether or not I think he could potentially be a good fit for the New York Giants. But we're going to start with Evan Engram, and a lot of you guys have asked me to give my opinion on Ingram and what the New York Giants should do at the tight end spot. Of course, there's a very prominent tight end where the New York Giants may be picking at 11. As I've started to see the Giants be mocked into taking Kyle Pitts out of Florida. The guy is a tremendous talent when you look into him. 6'6", he's a monster of a man. Good blocker. NFL comparison is Darren Waller and would be a great playmaker for the Giants. The question then would be, what would you do with Ingram if you were to draft him? And even if you weren't to draft him, what's the future plan with Evan Engram at the tight end spot? And it seems like throughout the year that the New York Giants wanted to give him every possible opportunity that they could. And I can't blame them. We didn't have a lot of weapons, especially after Saquon Barkley went down. And I'll be the first to say I was wrong. I went into this year expecting a good season from Evan Engram if he could remain healthy. And that we're not even going to get into that. But going into the year, that was the biggest question mark with Evan Engram. Of course, he had drop problems early on in his career, but really it was the injuries. He missed 14 games in his first 3 years combined, 14 out of 48 contests. Not a good start to your career in the injury department. And that, in my opinion, even though he stayed healthy this year, that's still a major question mark going forward. The Giants, of course, extended him on the 5th year of his rookie deal, which I still think was the right decision because it was only $6 or $6.5 million or whatever it was before the year started. So I completely understood that. It also potentially increases the trade value for him if you were going to end the season. Ingram made the Pro Bowl this year, which a lot of Giants fans, myself included, thought was a complete joke. But obviously is thought of somewhat highly around the league to be able to get that nod. And hopefully somebody views him that way, and maybe the New York Giants could trade him away. And maybe there's still some Giants fans that still believe in Evan Engram, still think he could be the guy. Here's my take on Evan Engram. Tight ends should not be costing your team's football games. And I'm going to pull up a chart for you guys to show you just how poorly he was in that drop department. But Evan Engram last year dropped over 10% of the targets that were thrown his way. He had 109 targets. He dropped 11. A lot of those resulted in interceptions. You think back to the last game against Dallas, there was a number of other games, not to mention the fumble against Cincinnati and the fumble that he, was credited to Daniel Jones on the pitch play against the San Francisco 49ers. He also had the huge drop against the Philadelphia Eagles. He cost us at least 2 games probably this year just with his drops and created a lot of turnovers. And I recognize he's a elite athlete. He creates separation. But do I think Evan Engram is a part of the future for this Giants team? Absolutely not. The question is, what could you get from him on the trade market? You never want to trade a player when he's at his lowest, but it may not be in the cards for Evan Engram and the New York Giants. So we'll have to wait and see how the entire offseason plays out. But let's jump into some of the things that I wanted to show you guys regarding Evan Engram. Then we'll jump into Allen Robinson. I'll give my opinion on that, and we'll touch on Devonte Smith and what some former New York Giants had to say about the wide receiver prospect out of Alabama. This is a chart that just goes to show you just how bad Evan Engram was. He had 11 drops this year, the most drops of any pass catcher in the entire NFL. And when you really think about it, it's horrible. You also tack on the fact that you think about the amount of targets he had thrown his way, it pales into comparison for some of these other wide receivers. And a lot of the guys on this list are rookies, right? You see Chase Claypool, he's near the top. You see Jerry Jeudy. You see KJ Hamler. There was a number of others, T. Higgins, that are younger players. And you see highly targeted players such as Adam Thielen. The guy gets a ton of targets. You look at a guy like Stephon Diggs, who gets a ton of targets. Evan Engram only had 109 targets, yet he had 11 drops. That's over 10% of his targets. And in his rookie year, it was a problem as well. That's been a big problem for Evan Engram. And it cost us some games, and you can't have that with a quarterback like Daniel Jones. The Giants attempted, I think it was the 25th or 26th most passes in the entire league, yet had the 8th most drops as a team. Another guy that was on this list a little bit further down was Darius Slayton, who I think was a huge disappointment for a lot of Giants fans this year, and I think it's why I think we've all realized that wide receiver is a big need for this football team. Let's jump into what Allen Robinson had to say about him potentially going back to the Chicago Bears. The free agent told reporters, and I got this from the New York Post, the free agent told reporters on Monday, a day after Chicago was eliminated from the playoffs in a 21-9 loss to New Orleans, that the Bears had a year to sign him to an extension and didn't do it. I personally feel like we had an opportunity to be able to get something done over the last 365 days, said Robinson, who had vented frustration on social media during the season. So it looks like there's a little bit of an animosity there between Robinson and the Chicago Bears. And what will the market be for a player like Allen Robinson? Well, I'll jump in further detail into this in my free agency videos, but I would have thought $19 to $20 million during a normal cap year. If the cap's going to drop by about 15%, I'd say about maybe $16.5 to $17.5 million, probably settling around $17 million a year. He'll probably be looking for a 4-year contract. Allen Robinson is a great wide receiver, and you look at some of the quarterbacks he's had to work with throughout his career, and maybe the Giants won't be his number one destination. He may look at Daniel Jones, and maybe there's another quarterback that tickles his fancy more in terms of getting, higher production out of him. But if the Giants are willing to pay the price, Allen Robinson would immediately step in and be heavily targeted with the Giants to be our number one target, and I could see it being a very good fit. But he's worked with guys like Blake Bortles. He had 1,400 yards with Bortles. He's had 200 catches total over the last 2 years with Mitch Trubisky throwing him footballs. And I'm sure he's not very happy in Chicago. And yeah, he's 6'2". I think he's 220 pounds. The guy is a great wide receiver. He's ultra consistent. He had 1,250 yards this year. And yeah, he'd instantly be the number one option for the New York Giants. And I think a lot of Giants fans would welcome him aboard. So he's certainly someone to keep your eye on as the offseason progresses. And I think he'd be a great fit here if we were able to get the cap space and bring in a number one wide receiver. The other thing I'll say is I think signing a wide receiver in free agency, if it fits, gives us a lot more options in the draft. Whether it's to draft defense in the first round, whether it's to double up and take another receiver, take Pitts the tight end, it gives you the option to really go best available player at that spot. If they don't address free agency and at the wide receiver position, I think you're almost forced to take a wide receiver as early as possible. It's that big of a need. You need to find out what you got in Daniel Jones. Then I wanted to pull up some things about DeVonta Smith and what some former players had to say about him. DeVonta Smith last night was spectacular. The guy had 215 yards and a half. And right now, if you ask me, I'm going to say exactly what Justin Tuck had to say. Not that I'm in favor of doing this, but if the Giants want DeVonta Smith, get it out of your head, Giants fans, at 11. Unless he completely bombs at the combine, maybe, Chase, really moves up and we'll see. But I do not think DeVonta Smith will be there at 11. The guy, he won the Heisman Trophy. He's fantastic, and is is a great wide receiver. This is what Tuck had to say about him. Trade up and get this kid, DeVonta Smith at Giants. Jeez. And, we're going to pull up some other quotes, but, of course it's reactionary, whatever else it may be. McKinney said, where do we pick in the draft? Asking for a friend. Lawrence Tynes went on to say, I'm taking DeVonta Smith at 1. This kid is so silky smooth. And that's what some current and former New York Giants had to say about the prospect. And, yeah, the guy is special. And I'm scared that he may end up with the Philadelphia Eagles. Do I think he'll get there? Probably not. I look at DeVonta Smith. He could go number 3 to the Dolphins, or I think maybe he goes number 5 to Cincinnati. I don't think he gets out of the top 5. But we'll have to wait and see how it all plays out, throughout the draft process. A lot of people were saying that about Jerry Jeudy and CeeDee Lamb last year. They fell a lot further than people thought. Sometimes wide receivers trickle down in the draft. It is a rich wide receiver draft class, so maybe teams will not value him as high as some people think. But do I think DeVonta Smith will be there at 11? No. Don't bank on it. I don't see him being there for the New York Giants when we pick at 11. Maybe Jalen Waddle is, or maybe they go with a guy like Kyle Pitts if they're going for a playmaker at that position. Of course, if you could get a guy like Allen Robinson in free agency, it opens up a lot of the possibilities in terms of where you could go in that first round, which is where I think the New York Giants want to be. The question is, are you going to have enough money to bring in a guy like Allen Robinson? But it sounds like he's not happy with where he's at with the Chicago Bears. And can you really blame him? As far as Ingram goes, if you can get a third or fourth round pick for him at this point, I think it'd be better for him, and I think it'd be better for the New York Giants. The question is, would he warrant that value? I think maybe you could get a third round pick for him. I think some teams will definitely still view him as a guy that is a weapon, that is still on a cost-effective deal at $6 million. But do I think he should be a part of the New York Giants' future past the 2021 season? Absolutely not. At this point, I can't trust him, whether it's to stay healthy or whether it's catching footballs. But we'll have to wait and see how it all plays out throughout the remainder of the season. I think one thing for certain that we could say as Giants fans is we need to get Daniel Jones as much help as he can possibly get. And that may be Allen Robinson, or maybe it's Devonte Smith. As always, guys, if you liked what you watched, please subscribe, drop a comment, maybe give me a little thumbs up. Cheers.